Welcome to The Funnel. My name is John Shea, and I am the president of Alignment Group. This is episode 167 of The Funnel, 6-step sales hiring process, qualify. So we're about halfway through the podcasts on the hiring process, and this next step, qualify, is where you really determine who this candidate is and whether you want to proceed. So you're going to learn today the next hurdle in the weeding out process is the qualify stage. You're going to learn a little bit on how to qualify. And I'm going to touch on something I think is really important. Qualifying can be unique to your company. So when I build out this process for clients, I teach them that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about the next hurdle in the weeding out process. And I keep saying it over and over again. It's like two parallel lanes running to one another. You're looking for that ideal candidate and you're looking to get rid of the pretenders. Or it's a funnel where you're just pouring the candidates in and out of the bottom come the candidates who meet your standards. And that's the objective here. That was the objective right from the beginning when we started this process and started talking about it. Building out the profile, the ideal candidate, searching for that ideal candidate. We even talked about how do you find those candidates and where to find them and how to make a connection with them and using some of the tools today that are available to do that. Ultimately, you're trying to attract those people who fit the profile. Then the next step is to assess them and determine if they truly fit. Okay, their resume, their job title, their history, their income stream, who do they sell to? Okay, that fits. Now the assessment's going to tell us whether they can succeed in the role that you've laid out. You've narrowed down the candidate pool to people that have moved through the assessment process. Now's the time to get to the weeding out process when you're actually talking to individuals. Okay, so we've gone through 3 or 4 steps here, and this is the first time you're going to invest in talking to a candidate. You've identified them, you've done the search based on the profile, you've gone through the assessment, now you're in the qualify. So the objective here is to determine if they're a fit enough to come in and have a conversation with you. And it doesn't have to be a huge process to qualify them. But the objective is to make sure that your investment in time is worth it. That's one. 2, before you bring somebody in for a real big interview, you want to make sure that this is a person, maybe out of a multiple set of candidates that potentially could come work for you. It's that simple. It's not really that hard of a concept to understand. It's just if you don't follow the process and you get out of order, that's when problems start. For example, so-and-so recommended this person, you interview this person for a job, and you don't put them through the process because it came from somebody you know and like. I tell people when they say that to me, I say, look, that's great. I'm going to tell you we have a process here, so I can't make any guarantees. I know this is your stepbrother or your uncle or a friend of yours, but I can't break the rules for anybody. So send them over. I'd really like to put them through the process, but understand that there is a process in place, and we may not interview them if they don't get through the first couple of hurdles. It's okay to say that to somebody. It doesn't cause a lot of problems. I've done it, and I know how it works. So just keep that in mind when you're going through this process and you get to the qualify stage. So how do you qualify? So I spend a lot of time walking clients through this, and there's a couple of real key components that I spend time on. What I'm going to touch on are kind of the overarching basics that you need to put in place to qualify a candidate properly. First of all, this is really where you're beginning to score people. And I suggest scoring them from now until the end of the interview process so you can make a real qualified decision. So you know that you've done all the homework leading up to this, right? You've done the profile, you've done the search, you have some candidates in the pipeline, they've gone through the assessment. Now you're ready to do the qualifying process. This is where it can get a little muddy. You might be talking to 8 or 9 people or 10 people. How do you keep that straight? And everybody says they take really great notes. That's fine. Take a lot of notes. but I suggest you score them out. You set a criteria, and you score based on how they measure up on that criteria. And then at the end, you take all the candidates, and you tally up the scores. Then you determine who you're going to bring back. It's that simple. Now, a couple of things that you need to really sort of focus on, and this sounds funny, but determine their grasp of the situation. Do they understand your company? Do they understand the role that you've laid out? How much do they know about you? I mean, it's pretty easy to find information out, but you would be surprised at how many salespeople walk into an interview without any knowledge of the company, of you, of anything. And to me, that means something. Some people might say, well, that's no big deal. I think it is. First of all, if you walk into a prospect without understanding anything about their company, that's not good. So wouldn't you consider the job interview, the qualify stage, from the candidate perspective, a prospect, your prospective job? So why wouldn't you expect them to know that? So how much of a grasp do they really have on the situation? Do they understand enough to meet your expectations in your scoring sheet? You want to probe some of their sales skills, right? This isn't a time to discuss salary, and if somebody asks you about it, that would be a concern. It would be a concern for me. Or if they start asking about benefits, you're not that far along in the process to ask about those things. So you want to probe their sales skills. You want to see how they fit in the role that you've outlined. And so depending on the job, you're going to talk about that. Now, I on the video portion of this, I have closing in parentheses. Do they close you for the next interview? And some people might say, well, that really, that makes sense. Everybody does it. Well, no, they don't. And sometimes you don't really notice it. You're not paying attention. So you just kind of go through the process and you don't realize that they never asked the question. They weren't determined enough to close you for the next step in the process. You set out some ground rules in the qualifying stage. Right up front, you tell them the ground rules. And then you want to find out how much they stick to those ground rules. Now, again, I'll get pushback on this. Well, I like a sales rep that's aggressive and pushes the envelope. I understand that. There's a time to be aggressive. But you also need to be respectful of your prospect and their time and the rules. And in the first conversation with a prospect, you start breaking the rules, you're going to have a problem on your hands. If you completely ignore what they said and go in your own direction, that's not good listening skills. So you're trying to figure out if they listen, if they pay attention, if they use some of those sales skills in the conversation with you. And then at the end of that conversation, you decide if it makes sense for an extended interview. After you've scored everybody, you don't have to make the decision right there. If you have 8 or 9 or 10 candidates you're talking to, it's okay to say, I'm going to get back to you. Now, here's the deal. You need to get back to them in a timely fashion. My suggestion is by the close of business if it's in the morning, or the next day if it's in the late afternoon. Tomorrow morning by 10 o'clock, I'll get back to you. We're going to let all the candidates know that we only have a position available, and we're only going to bring in a couple of candidates to interview. And I have a number of candidates to talk to today. So it's that simple. So they know the rules. And then you follow the rules. The next day, if they didn't meet the grade, you let them know. And if they did, you schedule the interview. That's all up to you. Now, I put phone interview here at the bottom, and some recommend the phone interview. It's a great way to qualify, and it doesn't require an extensive amount of time on your part, and I think that's a really good idea, scoring it out and going through the process. But I'm going to talk a little bit about maybe customizing the qualify process in a little bit. But a lot of times it can be done over the phone. It can be done in a very short amount of time, in under 30 minutes. There are some that say, and I agree with this, you can do it in some cases in 5 to 10 minutes. You'll know right away. And you can move on. Again, it's about weeding out the pretenders, narrowing the field down, and not investing a tremendous amount of time until it's absolutely necessary. So I want to take a moment here to talk about our 6-step webinar coming up on October 6th at 3 p.m. So these podcasts, these 7 podcasts on the 6-step process, hopefully have been very informative. I try to touch on the key components of the 6-step process, of the hiring process, and stress the importance and value of that. The webinar, I take a little deeper dive, and I get into some of the specific components of the 6-step process to help you implement it today in your company, to help you utilize it to be successful in hiring qualified salespeople. So the 6-step webinar on October 6th at 3 p.m., just go to episode 167 at the funnel, alignment-group.com, the funnel, and select the episode 167 in the show notes. There'll be a link, and in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see it. Just click on it, little image up there, and then fill out your information and register. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. So let's move on. Qualifying can be unique to your company. So this is where I spend some time with clients, and I talk about the qualifying stage, and I think this goes into the interview stage as well. So it's not just unique to the qualifying stage. But let's say I'm hiring an inbound sales representative. They're handling all the leads that come in. They're sitting at a desk. They're watching the leads come in. So how do they generally operate? They operate on the phone. They sell on the phone. Selling on the phone is a lot different than selling in person. Some sales reps, their job is to sell on the phone and then hand it off to somebody else. So that requires a whole different set of unique skills. Yes, we can assess for all of that. But I want to know, do they present themselves well on the phone? Can I understand them? Do they listen? Do they take good notes and respond back to me? Do they stay within the time frame they say they're going to stay within? Can they manage a phone conversation in a sales context? What if they sell in person? Maybe I do that qualifying in person. Some people would argue with me and say, hey, we're qualifying them. We can do this in the phone in less than 10 minutes. We don't need to bring them in. I don't know. Maybe you go through that qualifying over the phone and they come in and you're like, well, this person's not going to meet my expectations. They're disorganized, sloppy, whatever. They can't hold a conversation in person as well as they can on the phone. I don't know. But my point here is if the job requires in person, then do it. Now I'm going to make another recommendation. Maybe you don't have to do it in person. GoToMeeting has video. I use it all the time. I have podcasts on that. Why it's important to do video. Look somebody in the eye. You get to feel like they're there. And yeah, I spend the money on GoToMeeting video, and I have a really good microphone, so it doesn't sound like I'm in a tin can. And we have great conversations. So you might be able to get over that in-person part by doing a video. Maybe the job requires a lot of writing. Do you get a writing sample? Do you ask them to do some things that are testing their mettle in that area? What about outbound activities? My point here to the qualifying is that I spend time with the client trying to figure out exactly how their salespeople sell and build the qualifying stage and the interview stage around their sales process and how they sell. That doesn't mean I skip part of the interview. I don't scrutinize the resume. We'll get into that when we get into the interview. It doesn't mean I change the qualification process in a way that is a negative or affects the outcome. It means I'm trying to benchmark them against this role. So if they're going to be on the phone, I want to talk to them on the phone. If they're going to be in person, I want to see them. It's that simple. If they're going to do a lot of writing, I need to make sure they can write. Sounds funny, but there are people out there that aren't very good at writing. And it's okay. They can go do something else. It doesn't require that. But in this role, this is what I require. So I need to qualify for that. That's why I say it can be unique to your company. Well, that's it for the funnel today. Next week, I'm going to talk about, actually the next podcast, because I've been publishing a couple times a week here. We're going to talk about the interview process. But in the meantime, go to the website, alignment-group.com/the funnel, and subscribe to the funnel. Just put your information in there, hit subscribe. We'll send you, every time there's a new update or a new podcast, we'll send you the information and the link. And a lot of times we provide content to our subscribers only. So you'll get premium content. Social media. You can find me at facebook.com/alignment group. Twitter at ShayJohnR. I'm on LinkedIn. Connect with me. And Google+. You can contact us at jshay@alignment-group.com and our website, alignment-group.com. So until next time, keep filling the funnel.